Hi, my name is Peter Nelson. I am president of Nelson Insurance Advisors. We specialize in using non-woke Catholic fraternal insurance companies in order to protect our clients and members, whether it be in regards to life insurance or retirement planning. We have over 23 years of experience in the insurance industry, and we want to do business with people that believe the way that we believe. So please reach out to us at 423-793-2613, or you can find us on our website at nelsonplan.com. God bless and Godspeed.
I have to say, I was expecting either good news or bad news on the Francis health front. Any day now, we got an actual update worth giving you. So here we go. ABC News. This is going to set the stage for the entire conversation we're about to have about the bishop that got arrested. But here it is. Headline from ABC News. Pope Francis's prognosis has been lifted on 25th consecutive day in the hospital, according to the Vatican. He will continue to receive treatment in the hospital. The quick version of this is that he's shown enough improvement now that they're actually openly starting to talk about when he's going to go back to the Vatican. I've warned you already ahead of time that they have started setting up some sort of medical suite in Casa Santa Marta, which is a luxury hotel where he lives. So take that. So again, an improvement where he'll go back there. Take it with a bit of a grain of salt, just because he's likely to be receiving treatments for a long time once he goes back to Rome. But here's the meat of the story. Pope Francis's prognosis was lifted on Monday, marking his 25th consecutive day in the hospital, according to the Vatican. The improvements recorded in previous days have further consolidated, as confirmed by both blood tests and clinical objectivity, and the good response to pharmacological therapy. For these reasons, the doctors decided to lift the prognosis, the Holy See, the Vatican's press office, said in a statement Monday. The Vatican sources told ABC News that Francis's prognosis being lifted means he's no longer in imminent danger, but the clinical picture still remains complex. Regardless of the improvements, the 88-year-old pontiff will continue, quote, for additional days the pharmacological medical therapy in a hospital environment, due to the complexity of the clinical picture and the significant infectious picture presented at hospitalization, they said. Francis's doctor said there are positive signs of the pontiff's recovery, but caution remains, according to the Vatican sources. The Pope will move back to non-invasive mechanical ventilation and will continue an antibiotic treatment, the Vatican sources said. On Monday morning, Francis was able to participate in spiritual exercises for Lent for the Roman Curia, received the Eucharist, and then went on to the chapel, the private apartment, for a moment of prayer. He continued to participate in the spiritual exercises via video link and spent the rest of the afternoon alternating between prayer and rest. End quote. Now, that having been said, in the press release they let slip that he's back on solid foods, which means he wasn't on solid foods before that. So they kind of let slip that they were making him sound at least a little better than he was beforehand. Because if you're not on solid foods, you're probably not having coffee either. They said he was having coffee in the morning. Coffee is highly acidic, and somebody who is in the condition he was in was probably not having anything like that. Because if they can't keep solid food down, the chances of having coffee are slim. And I'm getting that's not just my prognostication. I have seen that comment from nurses and medical professionals who've been reading this, who are Catholics, saying this online all day yesterday. So that's your basic update on Francis, and I don't wish him any ill. That's why I say it's good news that he's going back, because I would like for him the same I want for everybody. The amount of time needed to accept the graces God offers freely to everybody so that he can, when the time comes, stand before our Lord in our Lord's friendship. That's what I want for him. That's what I want for me. It's what I want for anybody. Okay? So my personal feelings about his papacy aside. However, let's go to the news of the day, because I'm going to reintroduce you to a man. This man here on the right side of the screen is Cardinal Pietro Parolin, who has been maneuvering to set himself up to be the favorite for the papacy at the next conclave. He had been banking on Francis not making it through this latest round of health issues and not being here for much longer. And while that still remains the case, could remain the case, he may have been acting prematurely. One of Francis's more endearing traits is that he himself doesn't like ambitious men in the hierarchy. Those with power and ambition together tend to be brown nosers, and he doesn't really like them. Maybe he doesn't like the competition. Maybe he really does believe in his synodal vision for a new church, whatever that is. But he doesn't really care much for ambitious men. And so we are going to talk here about Cardinal Pietro Parolin, who again was reported to be rallying cardinals to his cause ahead of a conclave he thought might be happening in this month or April or maybe May of this year. And while that may still happen, he might be right. It's not looking so good for his planning. Though I think there will probably be the chance of a conclave happening in the near future should not be discounted. Francis is 88 years old with a history of lung issues. Okay, so again, it could happen. But for context on today's story, here's the Vatican News article that's really going to set the stage for this. This article was originally posted just a couple of years, was posted last May. And the headline is Cardinal Parolin on China. Obedience to the Pope enlightens love for country. Cardinal Secretary of State Pietro Parolin, speaking at an international conference for the 100th anniversary of the first Concilium Sinensis, says it was a model for many other mission countries. I don't know how the Vatican deal with China is the model for other mission countries, because it's a unique situation and a diabolical unique situation. But he loves that deal with China. Loves it. Absolutely loves it and thinks it's the greatest thing ever. The deal with China resulted in money being given to the Vatican. We'll talk about that more in a moment. But here's what this is for context for today's news story. This is Cardinal Pietro Parolin, the would-be Pope John XXIV, and his take on this whole situation. The Pope is the spiritual leader of all Catholics in the world, regardless of their nationality. But this obedience to the Pope not only does not harm the love each person should have for their own country, but rather purifies and enlivens it. These words spoken by Archbishop Celso Constantini, the first apostolic delegate to China over 100 years ago, are highly relevant today. The late Archbishop clarified that, quote, such communion is the best guarantee of a faith shielded from external political interests and firmly anchored in local culture and society. Sad to laugh about this because it's a really sad story. This Archbishop 100 years ago did this in good faith. Brought the gospel to that, helped bring the gospel and the sacraments to that country. He tirelessly worked despite difficulties, delays, and resistance to ensure the gospel of Christ took root in Chinese soil, was compatible with local society and culture. He also organized something called the Concilium Sinensis, the first and so far only synod on the Catholic Church in China, whose centenary was celebrated on Tuesday, May 21st. The anniversary is marked as an important international conference promoted by the Pontifical Urban University in collaboration with Fides News Agency and the Pastoral Commission for China. Among the key speakers in the morning session was Cardinal Secretary of State Pietro Parolin. It was an academic, not celebratory conference, as Rector Vincenzo Buonomo described it at his introduction, preceded by a video message from Pope Francis. It was not a historical reconstruction of the event, but a reflection on how the synodal event itself serves as, quote, a basis and reference for the enculturation that the Christian message brings, which can guarantee the presence of excellent believers and, at the same time, excellent citizens. Again, Francis's message, Cardinal Parolin's message, is that the Catholic faith makes people excellent citizens, which is true, by the way, but shouldn't be true for a place like the country we're talking about here. And that's kind of the crux of the problem. This is how Parolin sold the normalization of a parody of Catholicism in that country to the party, where the party's main issue was we get to choose the bishops and we get to fundamentally alter some things about the faith as it's practiced and believed in this country. There's stories out of that country where they replace pictures of Jesus and the crucifix and things with pictures of Dear Leader. Okay. This is stuff right out of like 1984. Okay. That's what they do there. And the good bishops, the ones who were like, I'm not going to go along with this. I actually am loyal to Jesus Christ and to his church, and I'm going to lead the faithful who want the authentic Catholic faith. I'm going to lead them in the faith, regardless of the consequences with the secular authorities. And in that country, the secular authorities don't mess around. Parolin has been cozy with that government for a decade. He's one of the architects of the deal, where the party gets to choose who the bishops are, where the party set up a parallel church called the Patriotic Association, where being a good citizen by their definition of it, is much more important than being a good Catholic. They've edited the gospel, they edited the Bible to make it more in keeping with them. Messages from Dear Leader as part of their masses and things. It's bizarro world stuff over there. And Parolin is the architect of it. Which brings us to this story from asianews.it. Headline: Bishop Shao arrested over illegal, quote unquote, Jubilee opening mass. The Public Security Bureau this morning arrested the underground bishop of Zhanjiang, and after he refused to pay a 200,000 yuan fine for celebrating mass on the 27th of December before 200 people. Last week, he wrote to the faithful, asking them to attend mass more often and pray the rosary for Pope Francis's health. And there's the bishop. And this is actually a bishop, not a party member who may have some valid sacraments, valid orders, but is otherwise, to call him a heretic is to be an insult to heretics, generally speaking, because what they've done to that is just completely just over the top. But he, again, you might be aware that this is a Jubilee Year of Mercy, and bishops around the world are celebrating that with masses and pilgrimages and that sort of thing. Even in China, they're doing this, or at least one bishop from the underground church tried to do that, and what happened is he got arrested for his troubles. Now, I'm not sure what happened to the laity there. I guarantee you, lay Catholics there probably got punished too, because this is the underground church, not the Patriotic Association. Here's the article. China security police arrested Monsignor Peter Zhao Zhumin, underground bishop of Zhanjiang. The prelate was taken into custody today at noon in connection with the opening Holy Year Mass he celebrated publicly on the 27th of December, which was attended by 200 people. As Asian News reported recently, the authorities claimed that the religious service was illegal and a serious crime in violation of Article 71 of the Religious Affairs Regulations. For this reason, they imposed a fine of 200,000 yuan, or 26,500 US, which Bishop Shao challenged, insisting that the church's activities do not violate the law. As a result, the prelate was arrested for his own safety, the Public Security Bureau claimed. Of course, his whereabouts are unknown, and it's unclear how long he will be held. Among his flock, people are concerned about his safety and health. Meanwhile, the Bureau and the Religious Affairs Department reportedly stopped several hundred people from taking part in a pilgrimage organized by the Kangnan Parish, which is part of the Zhenjiang Underground Church. Over the past few years, every Sunday, plainclothes agents have also entered underground churches in Zhangzhou to stop children and teenagers from attending. More recently, the Bureau has changed methods, delegating surveillance to neighborhood authorities. Officials are deployed to watch churches from 7 a.m. until noon, not only to prevent children and teenagers from entering, but also to prevent priests from celebrating Mass. Bishop Shao has refused to join Catholic bodies controlled by the Party of China, and for this reason, he is not recognized by the authorities. As Asia News previously reported, Benedict XVI appointed the then 43-year-old in 2007 as coadjutor bishop and successor of Monsignor Vincent Zhu Weifang, who passed away in September 2016. For his refusal to join the Patriotic Association, the authorities considered the Episcopal See to be vacant and backed Father Ma Jianxi, a, quote, patriotic priest, as the leader of the local Catholic community. For its part, the Zhangzhou underground community has launched a prayer campaign to support Bishop Shao, who has been arrested several times over the past few years. On the 25th of February, Bishop Shao sent a letter to the entire diocese, inviting the faithful to pray for Pope Francis, accompanying him with Mass and the recitation of the Rosary, urging God to support the pontiff in his illness with the Lord's grace. And that is, ladies and gentlemen, an actual bishop of the Catholic Church, or at least the post-conciliar order of things, for those of you who don't like when we call them all Catholic bishops. But he's not a Patriotic Association member. He actually cares about the souls of his faithful. Amazing. And for his crimes, he has been arrested for offering a Mass unauthorized during the Jubilee Year of Mercy time. Now, you may be wondering, what's the Vatican's response to that bishop? Well, coincidentally, they made an announcement. Nothing to do with it on the surface. Here's the headline: Pope Francis appoints NASA scientist and Chinese biologist to the Pontifical Academy of Sciences. Again, this is coincidental, I'm sure, except the article was published March 7th. And the article I just went over with you was published just a couple days ago, but the actual event happened in February, the last few days of February. Amazing. Here's the important part of this article. Pope Francis has appointed a NASA geophysicist, a Harvard genetics professor, and a Chinese embryonic development researcher. Ooh, that guy must smell of sulfur. Among 5 new members of the Pontifical Academy of Sciences, the Vatican announced Friday. The new appointees include Maria Zuber, an American planetary scientist involved in multiple NASA missions, Olivier Pourquoi, a professor of genetics at Harvard Medical School, and Meng Anming, a Chinese developmental biologist specializing in embryonic research. Also joining the Academy are Chilean molecular geneticist Luis Fernando Larrando Castro and Mexican environmental scientist Cecilia Torjada. The Pontifical Academy of Sciences brings together leading international experts to promote scientific progress and interdisciplinary research. Members participate in study groups and Vatican-hosted meetings to examine key scientific and ethical issues. So, they bring in experts to promote scientific progress and interdisciplinary research, which I don't know really what much has to do with the gospel, but that's what they do. And the guy that the Chinese scientist is an embryonic. He specializes in embryonic research. Again, the man must smell of sulfur. But that's the Vatican's response, essentially, to the arrest of that bishop. And that makes you wonder what role Parolin had in his appointment. Yeah, Harmony Gordon, embryonic research. That's what's happened. That's what's happened. It's unbelievable what you've seen, what you see here. They are cozy with that deal. They talked repeatedly about bringing the deal back. That's what they want to do. That's all they're going to do, is they're going to keep that deal alive for as long as they possibly can. And good bishops will continue to be arrested for doing their job because they care about their souls of their flock. While the patriotic bishops care about the interests of the party. That's what they care about. Jamie Keller says YouTube is red flag territory. Ooh, yes, they are. And this is where the entire audience is. Although I'm these days dual casting to X also. Antonio says that kind of research is diabolical. Yes. Jamie Keller says whenever you see a biologist messing around with yeah, this is who they're bringing into the Pontifical Academy of Sciences. To me, the Pontifical Academy of Sciences should be for using the gospel to address overreaches of science. Having people who are knowledgeable in the sciences, priests and bishops who are knowledgeable in the natural sciences, working with theologians who are also knowledgeable in the sciences, and philosophers who are knowledgeable in the sciences to do a gospel-based repudiation of the excesses in the natural sciences. That's what it should be for. But it's not. And that's the problem. Now, of course, this is a kind of materialist thinking, and it permeates the church. The church is dominated by materialist thinking. I'm going to give you an example here, seemingly unrelated to a lot of other things going on in the news recently. This comes from the National Catholic Reporter with this charming headline. Will Musk and Trump burn in eternal perdition for defunding the corporal works of mercy? At the end of February, the U.S. State Department canceled somewhat 10,000 programs that fed, sheltered, and cared for the people around the world. Yeah, that's USAID. It's Catholic Charities. The bishops are putting on a full court press to get their money back. You might not have heard this, but early in the week, the U.S. State Department made an announcement. They are cutting 83% of the grant funds through USAID. Eliminated, gone. 83%. Because they were being used for questionable purposes. According to the State Department press release on this, they were used for things that were often at odds with U.S. security interests. And the U.S. bishops are very, very angry about this. In fact, USAID was shrunk so much that it went from a quasi-independent agency to a small office in the U.S. State Department. Most people don't think there's really anything wrong with, there's some sort of crisis internationally. The U.S. State Department gives funds to help, say, an earthquake or something like that happens. We give money for goodwill purposes and humanitarian purposes to help. But the National Catholic Reporter, that staunch defender of orthodoxy and the Catholic faith, I can't say that with a straight face, sorry. These are the people who been told by the bishops at least once or twice a decade for the last 50 years to stop calling themselves Catholic, that they have no right to call themselves that as an organization. This is the organization that is telling people that is now invoking the corporal works of mercy when it comes to government money. So they now are threatening Musk and Trump with eternal perdition for cutting off federal tax dollars. This isn't about the corporal works of mercy. This is them weaponizing the gospel for their own financial benefit. This is an utterly reprehensible argument they're making, but it should surprise nobody. And then, of course, they find the least flattering picture. By the way, they color touch that. You can tell by looking at it. They find the least flattering picture of the two of them that they could absolutely find, because this is a propaganda piece. The article, by the way, is written by Pastor Tommy Reese of the Jesuit Church. He's sort of a Dollar General version of Father James Martin. Okay. Here's his argument. President Donald Trump and his Doge strongman Elon Musk are defunding and destroying programs that support and provide what Christians have traditionally called the seven corporal works of mercy, as opposed to spiritual works of mercy, which tend to the body, feed the hungry, give drink to the thirsty, shelter the homeless, visit the sick, visit the prisoners, bury the dead, and give alms to the poor. At the end of February, the U.S. State Department announced the cancellation of some 10,000 programs that fed, sheltered, and cared for people around the world, including the sick and children. The impact will be worldwide, but especially harsh on refugees fleeing conflicts in Africa, Asia, and the Middle East. The countries affected by these cuts, including Sudan, Yemen, and Syria, are home to millions of innocent civilians who are victims of war and disaster, explained David Miliband, president and CEO of the International Rescue Committee. Many refugees from these countries have fled to neighbors, such as Chad, that are ill-equipped to take care of them. I'm going to pause here, and that is remarkable propaganda. Remarkable. Oftentimes, the people who use the label refugee, they're invoking that specifically because there's legal protections for them. And legally, they're supposed to go to the neighboring country, the nearest country they can go to for safety. What ends up happening often is they don't go there. They go to Europe. Or they somehow end up in Mexico, coming into the United States, probably being helped with USAID funds. It's amazing how that works out. Many of the programs on the chopping block are administered through USAID, which provides food to the hungry, drink to the thirsty, shelter to the homeless, and medicine for the sick. The administration has also targeted refugee assistance programs run by faith-based organizations, such as Catholic Relief Services and U.S. Catholic Bishops' Migration and Refugee Services, evangelical Christian groups such as World Relief and Church World Service, as well as Lutheran, Jewish, and Episcopal ministries. The government has also refused to pay faith-based agencies for the work already done, a tactic Trump has been accused of using against companies contracted work on his real estate properties. His response to such complaints has been, "Sue me." And it goes on and on and on like this. And it goes to here. The seven corporal works of mercy have been a hallmark from the earliest times of the Christian community of what it means to be a follower of Jesus. Sadly, Trump and Musk are not the only political players exhibiting disregard for those in need. Many Americans, including some church leaders, are arguing that compassion is bad because it fosters weakness. According to a 2024 survey done by the Chicago Council on World Affairs, 51% of Americans favor cutting economic aid to other countries. Only 7% want to expand it, and 33% would keep it about the same. It turns this, what he's doing here, is turning the gospel into a partisan cudgel. Invokes our blessed Lord. Jesus condemned the rich man to hell for ignoring the poor man Lazarus at his door. Do you see what he's doing here? He invokes the end times at the last judgment. I mean, when was the last time you heard a Jesuit invoke the judgment and invoke our eternal destiny? And I mean a current Jesuit. Yeah, There's a handful of them out there. One of them is a high-profile radio show, does excellent work. We're not talking about Jesuits who are actually still Catholics and sons of St. Ignatius of Loyola. When was the last time you heard a mainstream Jesuit talk about the consequence of sin? Apparently, they're only willing to do that when their wallet is at risk. Amazing stuff. They should be ashamed of what they do. But they're not. Because Liz Yore thinks 80% of their Vatican funding comes from the US government directly or indirectly through NGOs. That's why they're acting like this. This is why they've completely lost the plot. Harmony Gordon says it's not charity if it's using our tax dollars. Taxation is theft. Well, it's not charity if it's, I'll agree as much as saying that it's not charity if it's using our tax dollars. Our Lord commanded us to do charity, works of charity. He commanded us to do works of charity. There's nothing wrong with giving organizations to help facilitate it. Nothing at all. But it seems when you read the gospel that you're supposed to help the person in front of you. And not just let the government take care of it and then ignore the person in front of you. Oh, this is what it looks like to me. Again, nothing wrong with giving money to charitable organizations to do it. I'm not even against government social programs per se. What I'm against is the way we use social programs and how they keep people either shackled to the government forever, or how we use this money to coerce governments to do what we want them to do. This isn't charity, what they're calling for. And Pastor Tommy Rees should be ashamed of himself. He really should be. But that's not the only story like this either. You see, we also get this from cath.net, the German news, the German-Austrian, more moderate life site. The headline, Betzing to break through thought patterns that want to make us believe you can't change things anyway. Now, Bishop Betzing is the head of the German Bishops' Conference. The German Synodal Way made the Synod on Synodality look like the Council of Trent by comparison. The Vatican kept trying to stop what the Synod of Bishops were doing in Germany, not by saying what you're doing is heretical, though, by saying go with the rest of the church, go with the universal church, participate in the Synod on Synodality. All these things will be addressed at some time. And that's when the German bishops became the biggest cheerleaders for what was going on at the Synod on Synodality. What here he's talking about is, what can I possibly contribute to making a difference towards greater cohesion, sustainability, and a justice for the thermometer problem? I'm going to tell you right now, this isn't the gospel. Again, this is the fake gospel of the new synodal church. And you can see how this connects to all the issues in the church today. All of them. What he's calling out here is this idea that a lot of people have become kind of cynical about changing things going on in the world, how you can't do anything anyway. He says here, the second condition is just as demanding. It means breaking through thought patterns that try to convince us. You can't change anything anyway. What can I do to help things change towards greater cohesion, sustainability, and justice for creation? It's long been known that a single grain of sand moving in the desert can cause a hurricane. A single stone in the mountains can trigger an avalanche. And who among us doesn't have stories to tell about the good that a single person can do? To counter fatalism, Pope Francis is relying on a different lifestyle that needs to be practiced. All is not lost, he encourages, because people who are capable of degrading themselves to the extreme can also control themselves, decide to do good and improve themselves, regardless of all mental and social conditioning. End quote. He then invokes God a little bit here for this. You notice this is all part and parcel of the same thing you just heard from Tommy Rees. Their gospel is a gospel of materialism. It's not the gospel of Jesus Christ. I don't know what it is, but it's a materialist gospel. It is a false gospel. And shame on these bishops for that. That's why they're all worked up in a lather about that money being gone. You can't promote your materialist false gospel for creating a more socially just world and creating a better world and a better tomorrow without a lot of money to go into it. You can't. You know, one of the things that's been remarkable, nobody could quite figure out, was in the church in Germany. You may not be aware of this, but to receive the sacraments, you have to be registered with the government as part of a religious group, right? Catholic or one of the Protestant denominations or whatever. And you give your tithe at 10% in your taxes to the government, who then gives it to whatever it is you're registered with. And the only way out of that is to disaffiliate officially, meaning you have to inform the government that you are no longer Catholic or whatever, and they don't charge you the tithe anymore and all that. And they've been losing like 250,000 Catholics a year. Some years much higher than that, 400,000 Catholics a year. Yet nobody can figure out how is it that their bishops still live lavish lifestyles. Okay, remember, Germany and Austria were the places where where we had some of the worst bishops at the beginning of Francis's pontificate. You remember the story of the Bishop of Bling? I think he was in Germany. Yeah. He built a lavish mansion for himself, and Francis rightly called him out for it, before then giving him another job in the Roman Curia or something, but it's usually how it goes. But we can figure out how they're losing, millions of Catholics, and yet they're able to maintain these lavish lifestyles. Now, if you look at the role of the governments, their own government is a massive supporter of these non-governmental organizations, including Catholic ones. There's your answer. The church in the West is in bed with Caesar. That's what it is. The church in the West is enthralled to Caesar. That's what it is. And they can't quit government money. And so now they threaten Musk and Trump with eternal perdition and fire and all the rest of it. And the really sad thing is, if they actually cared about their eternal destiny, they'd be getting you to pray for them. Because Trump's not a Catholic. Elon Musk is not even a Christian. So you should be rightfully worried about their eternal salvation, their eternal destiny. You should be. You should be praying every single night for the president to convert to the faith. You should be. But not for the reason they tell you, but because you believe what the church has always taught about the necessity of our blessed Lord. It's just remarkable. I'm curious what you think of all this, though, so let me know in the comments. Does any of this surprise you today at all? Especially the use of the National Catholic Reporter hilariously invoking the 4 last things so they can get their government money back. I mean, it makes me feel like I need to take a shower just telling you about this. Let me know what you think about this in the comments, please. Like and subscribe if you haven't. It certainly helps. So does sharing this on social media. That helps a lot, too. And as always, pray for the church. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.